Hi, I'm Dr. Elaine Joseph from Research and Sponsor Programs, and today I want to talk to you about the use of controlled substances and dangerous drugs in research. After this training, I hope you will be a little bit more comfortable with some of the rules and requirements surrounding the use of controlled substances and dangerous drugs, as well as the appropriate records you are supposed to keep, and what you will be expected to do in the case of a DEA inspection. These are some of the terms that will be used in this presentation. What is important to understand here is that a registrant is the faculty member who registers with the DEA and Ohio Board of Pharmacy to use and manage the controlled substances and dangerous drugs. On the other hand, an authorized agent is somebody who is authorized to access controlled substances or dangerous drugs under the license of a registrant. That person can be an investigator, faculty member, staff member, or student. So what is the difference between controlled substances and dangerous drugs? Dangerous drugs include all drugs that require a prescription or drugs that are labeled as prescription only, veterinary and human drugs. So for example, prescription antibiotics, non-narcotic analgesics, and include drugs such as isoflurane. Controlled substances, on the other hand, are a subset of dangerous drugs and include those drugs that are highly regulated by the DEA. Examples include ketamine, cocaine, and narcotic analgesics. Controlled substances are divided by the DEA into schedules 1 through 5, depending on their potential for abuse and their medicinal use. Schedule 1 drugs have no legally recognized medicinal use and a high potential for abuse. Schedule 3 controlled drugs have currently accepted medicinal use and less potential for abuse relative to those in categories 1 and 2. So now that you know you want to use controlled substances and/or dangerous drugs in research at the University of Toledo. So what do you need to do? First, you should know that the University of Toledo policy on the use of controlled substances and dangerous drugs in animal and in vitro research sets forth requirements in a number of categories which will be discussed in this tutorial. You should look to this policy if you have any questions on the use of controlled substances and dangerous drugs, or contact me, Elaine Joseph, directly. In order to use controlled substances in animal or in vitro research, you must first register with the Ohio Board of Pharmacy and then the DEA. Implement security measures, follow proper ordering and procurement measures, etc. Or alternatively, you could become an authorized agent underneath someone who's already a registrant. Before you begin your registration process, you should first notify the IACUC office by contacting me, Elaine Joseph, at the email address shown on the screen. Then you'll want to request a TDDD or Terminal Distributor of Dangerous Drugs license from the Ohio Board of Pharmacy by using their online system. The steps are shown here on the screen. The fee for the license is $440 and the license is good for 2 years. Once you have obtained your TDDD license, you can then request a research registration with the DEA via their online system. There's no fee for this registration. You'll want to obtain a Schedule 2 through 5 research registration. If you need to obtain a Schedule 1 registration, you'll have to get a second registration. For the TDDD license or the DEA registration, Your address is critically important. You'll want to use the exact building name and the exact room number where your drugs will be stored. An example using Health Science Campus is shown here. If you have your drugs stored at more than one location, such as in multiple laboratories, you must have a separate TDDD and DEA for each location where the drugs are stored. If you do not wish to obtain your own TDDD license and DEA registration, you could simply ask another faculty member if you could use their license and registration. You would then be acting as an authorized agent under them. In that case, you would simply sign an authorized agent form, which is kept on file with the registrant, and notify the IACUC office. What's important to remember about being an authorized agent is that you cannot store your own controlled substances in your own space. Those controlled substances remain the property and under the control of the registrant. So you have to return those controlled substances to the registrant at the end of each business day. Physical security measures are extremely important. The registrant has to make sure that controlled substances are secure from theft, loss, unauthorized access, or removal. Physical security measures have to take into account the container in which the controlled substances are kept and the room in which they're stored. Schedule 1 controlled substances must be kept in a securely locked, substantially constructed cabinet or safe that is securely fastened to the floor or wall so that it can't be easily removed. Schedule 2 through 5 controlled substances, on the other hand, must be stored in a securely locked cabinet. You can use more secure storage, such that you would use for a Schedule 1 controlled substance. Cabinets or safes that you're using for storage have to be of a size and weight that makes transport or concealment difficult. You have to have a key or a combination lock, and it should be constructed so that forced entry is easily detectable. Just a reminder, expired controlled substances do need to be labeled as expired. They don't have to be stored in a separate safe, but they should be separated out somewhat from in-date items. And expired drugs cannot be used for any animal procedures. Small cabinets and wall safes that are available for purchase from a variety of sources are examples of good storage for controlled substances. However, other options for storage for controlled substances, particularly those that fall under Schedules 2 through 5, can also include locked drawers. If you or any of your authorized agents lose the keys to your drug safe or storage cabinet, or there is some compromise in the knowledge of the access code, please immediately report this to the U Toledo Police Department and the IACUC office. Controlled substances can be purchased from a variety of pharmaceutical suppliers, however, remembering to follow the U Toledo purchasing procedures. Remember, though, that orders will only be delivered to the physical address that is specified on the registrant's registration form. There are a number of times when registrants may need to dispose of controlled substances, and those are listed on the slide here. In order to dispose of controlled substances, you must render them irretrievable. In order to do that, you can either arrange for a reverse distributor to come and pick up your controlled substances, or you can use something called Drug Buster or RX Destroyer. These two are easily purchased and render the controlled drugs irretrievable. You must always use a witness when using Drug Buster or RX Destroyer. Regardless of the method you choose, you must fill out a DEA 41 form shown here. It requires you to list the drugs destroyed or picked up and the methods used. Registrants have to keep a number of records for controlled substances and dangerous drugs per the DEA and Ohio Board of Pharmacy requirements. First, registrants must keep both an initial and annual inventory of all drugs on hand. These inventories do not have to be sent in to the DEA or Ohio Board of Pharmacy, but should be kept by the registrant in their records. The inventory should have a witness and should include the relative time of day when it was performed. The DEA requires the inventory to be performed either at the start of the business day or the end of the business day. The registrant must also keep a running log or usage log of their use of controlled substances and dangerous drugs. This log has to show the type and amount of controlled substances dispensed, the name and initials of the person responsible for the use, the date of use, the number of animals injected, etc. The registrants must also keep invoices and receipts related to the purchase of controlled substances and dangerous drugs. If you're ordering Schedule I or Schedule II drugs, you'll also need to keep a copy of the DEA 222 form. A purchasing and receipt log, such as the one shown here, should also be kept for each drug ordered. Finally, it is critical that the registrant report any discrepancies noted in the amounts of controlled substances during their inventory or simply a routine check of the safe. These should be investigated, and if they are legitimate thefts or losses, they need to be reported. The UToledo discrepancy form can help you report significant losses and thefts to the proper authorities. These include the UToledo Police, the IACUC office, the DEA, and the Ohio Board of Pharmacy. So we've mentioned a lot of different records that you need to keep, but how long do you need to keep them for? Well, here at UToledo, we state that you need to keep your records 3 years past the time of your protocol approval. So in the case of an animal research protocol, this would be 6 years, since animal protocols are good for 3 years. Once you have submitted your registration for a DEA controlled substance license, you may get an email from the DEA that they would like to do a pre-registration inspection. Don't panic. This is normal. If the DEA contacts you, please email or call me, Elaine Joseph, as soon as possible. If the DEA arrives for an inspection, either announced inspection or an unannounced inspection, you'll want to contact me immediately. You'll want to review their credentials and ask to sign a notice of inspection form. Over the course of a DEA inspection, the inspector will want to look at a number of items, including your actual controlled substances and your records. Make sure you answer all their questions to the best of your ability. The inspector can ask anything and go anywhere they like. They will likely take many photos and notes during the inspection. Hopefully you have learned something today about how to register to use controlled substances and dangerous drugs, the records and security measures required when using these substances, and what to do during a potential DEA inspection. If you have additional questions or need more information, please contact me or the Research and Sponsor Programs Controlled Substances website.